Hello, Ricochet, and welcome to episode 74 of Radio Free Delingpole, broadcasting to you from occupied Europe. Listeners, I'm ashamed to say that a very nasty character is coming back on the show this week. You can hear him cackling dementedly in the background. Since he was last on the show, he's turned into what I would call a minor celebrity and what he would probably call a global superstar.
Well, I can only repeat what other people have said about me, and of course, Red State Media yesterday called me the Kanye West of journalism, which I was very flattered by, but also appreciated the accuracy of.
Well, if you're the Kanye West of journalism, then I'm the Eminem of journalism, and Eminem totally pwns Kanye. I think, in my humble opinion.
Totally what?
Totally. Oh, sorry. Is that like 5 years old? Am I showing my granddad colours?
You're so old. I love you.
Oh, I'm so old. All right. This person you can hear tittering in the background like some very naughty schoolboy at the back of the bus is my creation, my protege, Milo Yiannopoulos. Welcome, Milo.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You are, of course, my senpai, and it's always nice when you make space for me.
Senpai?
Oh, you don't know this?
Is that like Semper Fi?
No. This is like senpai and kohai. Like master and apprentice.
Oh, it's like Catamite kind of thing.
No.
Sorry, I'm lowering the tone already. Milo, when you are on the show, it automatically makes me think 5 fathoms lower. How can I bring myself to Milo's level?
I can tell, because when you're on with Toby Young, you're talking very high-mindedly about policy and education, and then with me, it's gay sex.
I have to say, Toby does rather drag me up. Toby drags me up rather higher than I would like, because Toby I don't want to diss him in his absence, but Toby has definitely become a grown-up. Toby and I are both 50 now, and I think that 50ness does sometimes descend upon a man. It hasn't descended upon me yet, but it's definitely descended on Toby.
You're barely into adolescence.
I would like to think so.
I meant that as the compliment that it is.
Oh,
I mean, I like to think of us both as sort of perpetual Peter Pan figures.
We are. We
still have our mischief, don't we? Can I tell you a story very quickly before we get into what we want to talk about for the rest of the show? And some people might not find this funny, but I was, for the Telegraph, I went to the Butlins Big Weekend. Now, if you're listening in America, you might know what Butlins is. Butlins is a sort of holiday park, and it doesn't attract perhaps the top rank of clientele, let's put it like that. And big weekends at Butlins in Bognor Regis are adult-only weekends where people sort of escape their normal lives to go and play dress up and get horribly drunk and sing along to bands that were famous 20 years earlier.
My youth.
Well, yeah, but not so much.
It's like my youth you're dissing, Milo.
No, not like dad rock bands, because they're not. These people aren't 45. They're more like sort of 25 or 30. Right. So not quite as old as that. But it's just a little Peter Pan thing. There are lots of costumes at these things. And one of them is Barbie in a box. So people dress as Barbie and then they make a box around them with like a clear front. And they are Barbie in a box. Great costume. Anyway, so am I allowed to... I can say the F word, can't I, in this?
You can't say the F word, no.
I can't say the F word?
I don't think so, no.
I'll excise that from the punchline. But anyway, so there's this couple... drunk off their heads on WKD 40, which is this Alco pop, slurring and lunging at each other. And one of them is dressed as Peter Pan and the other one is dressed as Tinkerbell. And the woman who is dressed as Tinkerbell finally decides she's had enough and turns around to her husband and goes, "You want to grow up, mate?"
That's exactly it. That's how I want to be at 70, 80, 90.
It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in real life, because they were completely unaware of the comedy of this because they were so engrossed in their drunken row. Just Tinkerbell is like yelling at Peter Pan, who's walking away from her, saying, she's mental. "You want to grow up, mate?"
Now, this is one of the things I love about you, Milo. And I know you like sentences that start that way, but one of the things I definitely love about you is that you have a very irresponsible streak, which can be turned to making the world a better place. And I think the perfect example of this is the scholarship that you've just launched. Tell us about your scholarship. And it is serious, isn't it, this?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So you'll hear from feminists and progressives and Black Lives Matter types and basically the whole of the media that women and ethnic minorities and gays are struggling at college, that there's a rape epidemic, that, people need special consideration, special funds, special programs. And indeed, if you are queer or brown or you have breasts, there are plenty of programs and plenty of things to help you. Actually, what the data shows is that the straight white man of feminist mythology, this sort of evil, patriarchal, overbearing monster, the straight white male, is actually the group in society that is suffering the most. And specifically, poor white boys have some of the worst educational chances of any socioeconomic or ethnic group, both in the UK and the US. Now, I quite like winding up feminists, the sort of nasty sociopathic harpies who like to say kill all white men, and I bathe in male tears, and being a white man is the lowest difficulty setting of life, and all this kind of nonsense. So I've set up a scholarship fund. It's called the Yiannopoulos Privilege Grant, and it is exclusively for white men who are struggling to put the money together to go to college. And all of the various incredibly famous and talented and amazing rappers and novelists and celebrities that are fans of mine on the DL, because of course they can't go public about it.
You're talking about Kanye. Has Kanye?
No. Kanye West is not a donor to my privilege grant. I would love that. I've managed to whip up. We've nearly finished the fund now. I've managed to whip up almost $125,000, and we're going to give out 50 grants of $2,500 next year. It's a small grant, but the difference between going to college and not going to college for poor families very often isn't $40,000, because a lot of it you can get in loans, and a lot of it you pay later. It's that sort of $2,000 to $5,000 that you need to sort of relocate to give you some breathing space, to buy some books, like just sort of get you on your feet once you're at college. Very often the difference between going and not going for a middle to low income family is just a couple of $1,000s. So this is sort of a grant that I'm throwing into the mix.
So it's a fantastic provocation. Is it legal?
Of it. Yes, it is. There's precedent for this because, of course, there are plenty of grants aimed at women, aimed at specific ethnic minorities. There's no reason whatsoever in law why you can't do it for whites. And indeed, there have, in fact, been whites-only grants in the past. What I always say is, I didn't start this, but something that stuck with me is, no one can resist the truth wrapped in a good joke. And you can be twice as you can be as offensive as you like, as long as you're twice as funny as you are offensive. And some of the best things in life start as mischievous, mean-spirited humor. And I was kind of drunk with some friends talking about how funny it would be if in the Milo merchandise store, which is going up later this month, I were to give all the proceeds to a scholarship fund for white boys. And I just thought, actually, I looked into it, and the data completely supports this. It is poor white boys who are suffering the most. They're not going to university. They're getting terrible grades. They're dropping out, like awful attrition rates. So yeah, I thought I would do it. So it's sort of it's wonderful because it achieves two things at once. It drives every progressive loony on the planet absolutely barking mad.
Yes.
And of course, it helps boys who need to go to college.
Win-win.
So you can say Milo is a troll and a provocateur and all the rest of it, but you can't argue with a kid waving a check, a picture of a check, and posting on Twitter saying thanks Milo for sending me to college. You can't really argue with that.
Yes. Talking of trolling, and you'll notice the effortless segue here. but don't you think, Milo, that in common with both of us, the leading candidate for Republicans in the presidential election is something of a super troll himself?
Well,
Donald.
The great Donald Trump, the savior of America, the man who will make America great again, both of our candidates for president. I noticed, by the way, that I've popped up in a list of celebrity endorsers of Donald Trump on Wikipedia. But
really?
They must have missed your name off.
You are such a bitch. Such a bitch. I made you. Be grateful. I am Alexander to your Bagoas, and never.
Well, Alexander died sooner.
Yeah, Alexander did, but also, who remembers Bagoas? One only remembers him in a Mary Renault novel. This is my annoying phone. Go away. Hang on. I just have to get rid of this. Hello.
Your podcast listeners are listening to James Deliball answering his home phone. This is what you tuned in for.
James, I'm recording a radio show at the moment. Can I?
What are you doing?
No, I'll have to call you back. Can you?
Are you done? Are we keeping you?
Can you believe that I had to? I don't know how to kill. Well, let's keep this in. I don't know how to kill my calls, but that was my riding teacher trying to persuade me to come riding on Sunday.
Oh, I love her. Is that the lady that I met when I visited?
Yes, she's completely bonkers, and she's very
great. I love her.
She finds one's weakness, and she knows I need a horse at least once a week. Not in a Catherine the Great style. I actually enjoy riding them, and so she badgers me. When are you coming next? When are you coming next? And I find it very hard to resist. Anyway, we were talking about the Donald.
We were. Anyway, so he's. When I say he's like an internet comment section come to life, I mean that as a compliment, because he's become, for the left, a sort of shorthand for all of the various gauche instincts and social anxieties of the working and the middle classes that the journalist, politician, academic class loves to sneer at. And he's become sort of the living embodiment of the sort of cultural libertarian internet revolt. And, people that I know who love him are not just, angry old white 50-year-old men, not even remotely. They're college-educated, smart, internet-savvy, funny people who just love watching him tear the world apart.
Yes, I agree. There's a lot about Donald that worries me. And I did one of those internet tests the other day where it finds out who your most perfect candidate is based on your political opinions.
I bet you got Hillary.
No, actually, it was a guy called Bernie
Sanders.
Bernie Sanders. That's it. Yeah.
That was closest to you.
My desire for permanent resolution and green taxes for every family.
It was your love of wind farms.
It was my love of wind farms. No, I did the test, and actually, my top candidate at 92% was Ted Cruz, but Donald came just below it, I think 90% or something. So, but I'm not actually sure, and I know you don't care about these things because you're actually just a mischievous sprite rather than a serious political animal. But
well, it's not like I can sue.
But wearing my Toby Young hat for a brief millisecond, yes. I would say that there are concerns about whether Donald Trump is a conservative, certainly concerns about whether he's got any remotely libertarian instincts. That said, I like him for the same reasons that you like him. I suppose in my case, it comes down to my visceral hatred of the system. I hate the way that, for example,
says the guy who sent his son to Eton.
Yeah, but we can talk about that if you like. We'll talk about Eton in a moment. But the reason that I hate the system is it seems to be arranged in the interests of, Goldman Sachs for one. I mean, have you noticed how Goldman Sachs has just poured some money into the Britain Stay in Europe campaign?
I don't have a bad word to say about Goldman Sachs. I look forward to a long and happy career doing their marketing. So.
That's because you don't understand politics, you don't understand economics, you don't care about either of those things. You're a mischief maker. Also, you don't have any responsibilities. I mean, because you're gay, you're never going to have a family to support. You're never going to have to worry about a lot of the things that most of us worry about. Some of us genuinely worry about this world, which has been stitched up in the interests of a kind of political lawyer bankster class. And I don't think that's the conspiracy theorist in me talking. I think it is a genuine problem.
Well, this is late capitalism at play, when many of the large institutions become entwined with one another, the state, banking, the law, academia. This is a function of late capitalism, the sort of intricate symbiosis in which all of the institutions that govern us exist. And the sort of nepotism, the revolving door stuff, people sort of hopscotching from, one profession to another, board of this, a very small number of people who do this. Keep the same names keep popping up. It's easy to be a conspiracy theorist in an era of late capitalism because it does look a lot like a conspiracy.
Well, it is, isn't it? I mean, surely. Most of the GOP candidates are like that. I think most of the political class in Britain are like that. Certainly, David Cameron, Tony Blair.
He's not beholden to other interests. You see, he's funding his own campaign. He is his own man.
What about George Soros? I mean, this is just something I picked up on the interweb, but I may be completely wrong. Isn't there some meme going around that Trump is indebted to George Soros in some way?
That sounds like bollocks to me. I've never heard that.
Right. Okay. Fine.
I mean, look, he's a businessman, so of course he's donated to both parties in the past because he was a businessman. That's a smart thing to do. That's what you would do if you were running a company and you didn't know who was going to be president next. It's completely obvious that there's a perfectly respectable, reasonable way to behave if you're, if you're one of the country's biggest businessmen, you want to make as many friends as possible.
Wearing my Toby Young hat again for a second. What do you say to the argument that if Trump gets the nomination, then Hillary is a shoo-in?
I think the opposite is true. I think he's the only person who can beat Hillary, and I think he will beat Hillary. Hillary is the perfect example of somebody who plays by the rules of establishment media, right? She will pretend to be offended at exactly the right moments. She will cry at the right moments. She does all of the sort of virtue signaling and grievance politics that the media loves so much. Trump is somebody who blows all of that apart. He doesn't even need the media. All he needs is a Twitter account. He is somebody who just doesn't. He is impervious to the traditional journalistic method, and it's to the normal rules of politics. And if anybody can beat Hillary, it's precisely him. And you know what upsets me the most is people say Trump's not presidential material. Well, presidential material is a very subjective thing.
Oh, totally.
Brits have a lot of kind of a sense of propriety and properness and appropriateness in a way that Americans sometimes don't. And this, the sort of I don't think anyone like Trump could ever rise to high office because they would be laughed at by Brits. But Americans love brashness and self-confidence, and the whole mythology around the self-made, entrepreneur hero. And Trump embodies that so well. Presidential material, well, he's kind of a Reaganite candidate in many respects. In the sense, he's a leader, he's strong. You can never imagine him sort of bowing to anyone, whether it's Putin or China or Mexico or whatever. He's very inspiring for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, that's what they want to see in their president. They don't necessarily want to see somebody who, dots the I's and crosses the T's in terms of, politically correct etiquette. And
totally.
And who is, stage managed and, one of these carefully packaged anodyne political figures like Obama, like Hillary, like most of the Republicans. People are sick of that. That's precisely why they're voting for him in the first place. So I think, is Donald Trump presidential material? Well, people look for different things in a president. And from what I can see, more than enough Americans think, yes, he is.
Yeah. No, I think the reason I've swallowed my reservations about Trump is precisely this contra mundum quality he's got. You and I have both experienced what it's like to be mobbed at the hands of the social justice warriors on Twitter, on the internet generally. And these are very, very nasty, dangerous people. And up until now, they've had all the runnings. And I see social justice warriors as the militant faction in the broader political establishment. I mean, they're just the attack dogs, but I think they are a manifestation of the values. You look at the smoothies like David Cameron or Peter Mandelson or Jeb Bush. They are just the diplomatic face of the kind of people who are out there on Twitter talking about sex, race, and using it against people like us who like to speak the truth.
Alone to shoot guns and hunt foxes. I think there's some truth in that. It would have been a difficult argument to make even 5 years ago. But now that these supposedly right-wing parties in Europe are buying into lies about campus rape culture, lies about, the wage gap, silly, bowing to ridiculous and nonsensical fact-free.
Oh, but more than that, Milo, think about what's being perpetrated against Europe by the most powerful leader in the European Union, Angela Merkel. Indeed. She has dumped.
Well, she's destroyed Germany.
She's destroyed Germany. 1.1 million unwanted immigrants from a religion which clearly has no intention whatsoever of integrating with Europe. And she's done this effectively by fiat. And she's done this with the complicity of her own media, of her own police, of her own political class generally, they've all refused to acknowledge what's been going on in their midst. And I can understand why the people are furious. And it hasn't been quite so extreme in the States yet, but I think Americans see what's happening in Europe and rather feel it might be coming their way unless they elect somebody like Trump to stop it.
Yes, I think they do. And what's exciting about Trump is that he's so uncompromising. He might not always present the answers you want, and sometimes he changes his mind on things, so he presents the answers you want for a few days, and then goes back. But what people like about him, what the media class doesn't understand about him is that people don't vote for him on the basis of his policy prescriptions. They almost don't care. And that is terrifying to people who only understand how to fight on the basis of policy, who only understand how to communicate with the rest of the world and to analyze other people in terms of policy positions and politics. Somebody like Trump just doesn't play by those rules. That's not why people like him, and they don't know how to handle it.
He's not career safe, is he?
Well, he's what we call on the internet anti-fragile. You know, the more you throw at him, the stronger he gets, and there's nothing you can do to him to beat him. The only person that can beat Donald Trump is Donald Trump by dropping out or by doing something absolutely catastrophic that turns everybody against him. That's the only way Trump loses. That's the only way Trump loses. And, you know, what people like about him is not necessarily they agree that it's specific prescriptions, although I think almost all Americans do agree with the substance of his immigration policy, even if they don't like his rhetoric. If his words were cleaned up and presented as, you know, as being from another politician, you know, 95% of Americans would say, yeah, as it is. Fewer do, but I think people are basically behind him. And the other Republican candidates are falling in line as well. What is it, Cruz, who now says he wants to build a wall? Where did I hear that before? You know, I think people just appreciate, beyond any of that stuff, the fact that he doesn't back down and he doesn't apologize. The only place I see that being a problem, incidentally, to put my intelligent analyst hat on, might be my Toby for a second. I'm going to impress you now. The only place I see that potentially being a problem is Iowa, because New Hampshire is doing great. He's doing great everywhere. He's doing great nationally. Iowa, the sort of evangelical Iowa caucus voters, you know, they don't like the lack of humility, of spiritual humility from Trump. So I think he needs to pull something out of the bag if he wants to beat Cruz there. But, I mean, he's beating him everywhere else, and he's leading nationally. So if he loses Iowa, who cares?
He could wear a hair shirt, couldn't he, when he goes to Iowa?
No, I'll tell you what I think he should do. I think he should. We should see a moment of genuine sincerity and humility, if not contrition. Because I don't think he's got anything to be sorry for. So I don't think he should start apologizing. But I think we need to see humility and authenticity from Trump. I think he needs to acknowledge, if not atone for past sins. Because, I mean, by objective metrics, he's not a very good Christian. And people in Iowa care about that kind of thing. Right. He's divorced. He's, you know, the living embodiment of greed and kind of ostentatious displays of wealth. So I think he needs to bare his soul before the electorate and talk about some of those things. But, I mean, everywhere else who cares. Now, of course, that brashness and that unapologetic displays of wealth and the manner he has, of course, rubs people up the wrong way, very much so in Britain. And I know you want to talk a little bit about what's been happening in the UK. Perhaps you could tell our listeners what's been happening.
Well, I don't know. I've been trying to sort out my fox hunting career, haven't I?
Well, in Parliament.
Sorry, that. Oh, yes.
I was doing a beautiful segue.
Yeah,
there.
and I missed it.
I was reciprocating.
You weren't
up for you, ready for you to see. Yes,
a bit.
Our MPs are idiots, and here's why. And you totally missed it.
Yeah. Yes, there was this ridiculous kangaroo court, wasn't there? Not staged in Parliament itself, but in a kind of committee room to one side, at an event orchestrated by a bunch of mostly Labour MPs and mostly Muslim MPs, by the sounds of it. Yeah. These hectoring young misses who've been elected in these sort of inner city constituencies, which are dominated by Muslim immigrants, and they took the opportunity to wag their fingers at Donald Trump and say how racist he was. And it annoys me, things like this, because I think it gives Britain a bad press in America. It gives the impression that...
And you know what was amazing is, we were watching Trump give probably the best speech of his life at Liberty University. It was typically in Trump fashion. It was sort of meandering and sort of jittery, but the general trajectory was great. The delivery was great. Everything about it was, it was probably the best speech that Trump has given. And he didn't even, and for Trump, who will fight anyone and punch anyone, like National Review this week, who have come out against him and roped in all the mates they can and done a huge anti-Trump front cover this week, or this fortnight. I think it comes out fortnight now, doesn't it? He will jab at anyone, but he didn't even acknowledge the fact that that a clump of idiot British MPs were debating whether or not Donald Trump, who might be the next president of the United States, should be banned from Britain. I mean, it makes us look so parochial and so preposterous, and so, I mean, it's just so weird, isn't it? When you read like Dan Hannon's book, and you realise that Britain, although it didn't invent, democracy, property rights, freedom of speech, it spread those things more effectively than any other country to the rest of the world. And most of the places where Britain has been and where Britain spread those values are nice places to live, like America. And you look at America taking the First Amendment seriously and exploring and experimenting with free speech, and by and large not doing too terrible a job of it. And then we've got our sort of dull as ditch water, 3 brain cells to rub together, MPs from Hull and Bradford debating whether Donald Trump should be banned from Britain, and for what?
Yes,
it just makes us look so stupid.
There's lots of this madness going on in Britain right now, and I don't know how much have you noticed, because you're so America-centric these days. Yeah. But one of the things that really bothers me about conservatives in Britain seem to have sort of taken the view that, well, we won the last election, much to our surprise, because we thought that the Labour were going to get in and we're going to be run by socialists, and now we're very grateful. And isn't David Cameron wonderful? We may not think he's perfect, but he's done a mighty good job as well. This is the Toby Young view, I would guess, of the Conservative Party. And I look at my country, and, for example, I look at the story of Lord Bramall, a distinguished British field marshal, I think he is, who was at D-Day. He won a military cross. He got wounded in the D-Day landings. Brilliant general. The police brought a case against him for paedophile abuse. Apparently, some lunatic with a history of mental illness problems and of telling stories which turned out not to be true, decided that he had been abused many years ago by Lord Bramall. So the police came round to his house, raided his home. The 92-year-old man found absolutely no evidence and dragged this man's name through the mud, and then refused to apologise. That's story number one. Then story number two, we've got all these ambulance-chasing lawyers currently pursuing British military personnel for alleged war crimes they may or may not have committed while on active duty in Iraq in the last Gulf War. This again has been sanctioned by our system. That the Ministry of Defence has allocated a budget to help these law firms bring about these
cases against our own soldiers.
Cases against our old soldiers. And the one that particularly got me was this sniper who was had up by one of these ambulance chasing law firms, because when he shot dead an Iraqi insurgent who was firing a rocket-propelled grenade at a British base, he did not first call out a warning. I mean, you're not not into war much, are you, Milo? But you've got to admit that is pretty bizarre, isn't it? A snipers who are supposed to be silent and deadly. And when a guy is firing an RPG at your own side, I think within the terms of combat, I think any terms of combat, that's perfectly legitimate response to shoot him without shouting out a warning. And this guy is being threatened with legal action against him. Just two examples of the kind of lunacy which I think is abroad in our country.
I think it's true because we're ruled over by such pussies. And I think this is the problem in the US as well. we've got this incredibly weird situation where we're fighting multiple wars and in various different sort of combat situations everywhere in the world. Meanwhile, at home, the civilians who actually run the army seem determined to tear it apart. Yeah. In the UK, the budget for the MOD being slashed over and over and over again. We basically don't really have
by conservatives, for goodness sake.
By the conservative, we don't really have an army anymore. No. In the US now, all these moves to put women on the front lines because the civilians who determine which brigadier gets a promotion and gets gets honours of whatever kind, have this sort of crazy diversity, initiative. So I'm writing a big piece this month, actually, which you'll like when it comes out, about women on the front line. What a total disaster it is having mixed-sex combat units and all of the things that go wrong, the way it endangers soldiers, not just the men, but the women themselves, and the efficacy and morale of the units. And everything about women on the front line is a disaster. And this is driven entirely not by any assessment of what will make for the most effective fighting force to beat our enemies abroad and to strengthen our military, but rather the sort of weird, diversity-obsessed, fact-free, allergic to science sort of weird progressive politics, which has now infected both sides of the political divide in the West, whether it is Britain, where we are, or America, where we're based as far as our Breitbart responsibilities go. And I write mostly for America, and Ricochet listeners are going to be mostly from America. Both sides of the political divide have been infected by this stuff. And it's totally, totally bizarre.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. One always expected these attitudes from liberals, from the liberal left. But when you see conservatives, and people one might have considered to be quite red meat conservatives, even some of my friends who are politicians, I worry about. Even it's that wretched phone again. I don't go away, phone.
No,
Hello. I'm just doing a podcast. Okay, bye. Right.
You could just pull it out the wall when you're recording these things.
Yeah, I forgot to do it.
Sort of turn it off.
Yeah, but doesn't it go with my, hey, granddad, you're quite an amusing character, you're so useless?
I mean, it's given me some laughs, and I think people listening will
some lols, yeah.
Enjoy your hopelessness.
Everyone knows what my phone ringtone sounds like, and it's probably so dated now.
And whatever that noise is that
probably
you?
Is it like early Justin Bieber? Is it that dated? Or maybe more? I don't know what your benchmark for something that's really square Daddy-O is, but I'm sure whatever it is, I've reached peak square.
To be honest with you, I'm not interested in anything until about 1992, 93. So when Jurassic Park and the Spice Girls come out, that's when culture starts again. I mean, basically, music dies with Wagner in 1883. There's really anything anywhere between there. I mean, the 50s, 60s, and 70s is just a complete write-off.
Which is why, Milo, it's always a mistake to talk about culture with you, because there's so much there's so much you're missing. But then I'm
missing nothing. I'm missing dad rock. I'm missing the Beatles, the most overrated band in history. The Stones, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. My God, what a load of old bilge. No. It's so remarkable to me that otherwise intelligent, cultured, erudite people with good taste listen to anything that came out in the 60s or 70s.
Discuss. Listen. By the way, I wanted to take issue with this idea that I have sent my boy to Eton to become
creating the ultimate scion of privilege in your offspring. Because
can I explain?
You're basically you, the ultimate self-styled.
Are you going to
figure
give me a chance
hurling your young boy into the very heart of establishment privilege?
Can I explain why my son?
If you really meant it, you do what lots of very respectable American families who don't like, for example, Common Core or any other things that are going wrong with America.
Home educated,
and you would homeschool him.
Yeah. Number one, I do it because it is the most fantastic provocation. There is nothing more annoying to leftists than the notion that you and you would agree with that. It is just epic trolling. It's educational trolling. Number one,
I'm paying £30,000 a year for epic trolling.
Yeah. Number two, the kit. The kit is what we would call, I suppose, what does Americans call it? It's a fanny magnet, isn't it? It's girls. If you go to Eton on the 4th of June, you find all these nubile young misses, the creme de la creme of all the English girls' schools. They all come up, and they're just sort of like looking like these these whores, basically, who've come to net themselves an Etonian.
Oh my God! No, they've come to look for a husband.
But think about it, Milo. This is quite important. We have no money in our family, and it could be very, very useful if my boy ends up marrying into some serious posh. He could be like that.
To find like a Russian countess, or better, one of those like Bulgarians with a huge castle and like 50 million quid in the bank, and really no idea what to do with it, who's ended up at a girls' school in England somehow. And yeah, it's perfect for you.
Well, I married a Bulgarian, so yeah.
Oh, you did? That's right.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. Or are you familiar with that rapper, Professor Green?
I am. I don't really listen to that.
No. You don't have to. But he's fallen on his feet. He married the heiress to some fantastic fortune who goes on holiday sort of twice a month, and. Can you? Well, you can't imagine, obviously, because you're gay. But I can certainly imagine what it would be like to be married to a woman who I'd just love to be given a sort of pocket money handout every weekend. Darling, here's another 10,000. Go and buy yourself a Hunter and some nice new shiny boots. It would be fantastic. And this is the kind of
you forget that many homosexual unions are based on 1950s style idyllic husband and wife norms. So very often there's the pretty young one who stays home, and there's daddy who goes to work, and the pretty young one who stays home gets the credit card. So this is a dynamic with which I am familiar.
Yes. So is it too late for me to go gay, would you say? Because I mean, I love my wife, I love my family, but I have to say I can't afford them. I think
I want a horse. And it's really
No, I do actually. No, actually, I do. I have to say, it may be harsh, but
I love my wife and children, but I
can't. If I could exchange my family for 6 hunters, a groom and an undergroom, and just somebody to look after me. In fact, you know what? I know this gay couple.
Would you do that?
I know a gay couple who hunt.
I'm going to hold you to. Would you do that? Would you swap them?
It's going to be very, very hard. Do you know what it's going to be like? It would be like Sophie's Choice. It will be a Sophie's Choice moment. Boy, girl, I love you very much, darling. You've been a good wife to me. But don't you think? Come on. I mean,
yeah. What's more important, my happiness or yours?
So anyway, so just going back to Eton briefly, we got to trolling, we got to the kit, which is just totally fantastic.
You were justifying your complete capitulation to the establishment, despite your professed rebellious
3.
values.
And I know you don't understand these subtleties because you are actually quite rather broad brush. Let's say, Milo.
I have anyone who follows me on Twitter will know I have all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. So even in my choice of metaphors,
subtlety of a horse that's been caught in a road accident and there's just bits of
just bleeding out. On
just everywhere. It's awful. That's you. You are the horse. You're the horse on a motorway in a motorway pileup. In fact, you're probably
flung out the back of a horse box.
You are actually cavalry on the motorway, colliding with juggernauts.
What is wrong with us?
The other reason another reason that I like the fact that my boy goes to Eton is that weirdly it is run like a kind of libertarian experiment. I know of no other public school which is run on quite these lines. The boys can basically do what they like.
Because it teaches them the consequences of their actions early.
Yeah, it's a little known fact about Eton because everyone imagines it. Yes, it's the best privilege. It's very strict. It's not. They don't.
They let them go to bed whenever they want.
That's right. They don't have bedtimes. They don't check that. They don't have allocated homework times either. You do your homework when you want to. If you want to do it in the small hours of the morning, and play video games up till then, that's absolutely fine. They don't have many rules. The only thing they have is if you fail to perform either on the sporting field or academically. Well, actually, it's very academic now, so you can't not perform academically, or musically or whatever. That's when you start getting into trouble. That's when they care. They just don't like you to be a loser. And
it does sound wonderful.
It's idyllic, yeah. So yeah, that is why Eton. It is just the best school in the world.
Yeah. Do you think it is the best school in the world?
Yes.
Yeah,
no question. And if I were American, I would feel so jealous. There is, I think, one American boy in my son's year, and he is the luckiest American in the world. I mean, to be American,
to go to Eton,
to get that, yeah. Mind you, boy phoned me last night, and he wants to go to. There's some sort of exclusive, well, obviously exclusive American boarding school, which does a kind of scholarship for Etonians to go and stay there for 2 weeks in the spring holidays, and he wants to go and do that rather than be with his family. But it would be quite a cool thing to do, don't you think?
It does sound quite cool. Yeah, that sounds lovely. Well, of course, your son is not the kind of person who needs the Innocuous Privilege Grant, but well, I don't know. Maybe
I'll just give one anyway.
I'm no. Well, this is what I'm thinking. I mean, I might. It's $2,500, so it doesn't end up being very much in pounds.
No.
But yeah, next time he comes next time you're looking to pony up, but they ask you to pony up for school fees. You may wish to come and apply for the Innocuous Privilege Grant.
He actually wanted to go to an American university, but I've said no for two reasons. First of all, because of all that nonsense on the American campus,
social justice craziness. No, you should send him to Oxford or Cambridge.
Yeah, and also I've heard that Oxford and Cambridge are much better for undergraduate degrees. Americans are better for postgraduates, but they're kind of lousy for the.
I think that's right, and also you've got to spend 4 years doing it. In some cases, 5. It's such a long time to get such a low quality qualification.
So for all those reasons. Now, what was the? Oh yes, finally, I think, because we've delighted our audience for quite a long time.
I think we have to wrap up in a couple of minutes. So
Twitter. Tell me about this Twitter thing you wanted to because I remember about a month ago, I tweeted, I think, to you that, hey, isn't this great? Isn't Twitter fun now that we've won? Now that we've cleared the field, we're not getting any misery anymore. And then suddenly it all kicks off again, and one realizes you lose your blue tick
verification badge because Twitter doesn't like my politics.
Yes,
I'm the wrong kind of homosexual. You see.
Yes,
I've gone off ideological reservation, so I have been punished by the Twitter Stasi.
Have they explained it all?
No, of course not. Of course not. Never apologise, never explain, just, punish. I'll tell you briefly what's going on in Canada very quickly before we finish. So a guy called Gregory Allen Elliott got into an argument with some feminists online, and these feminists reported him to the Crown in Canada for criminal harassment because he had an argument with some feminists on the internet. This is a landmark case. It would have been very worrying if he'd been convicted for this, because what it would essentially, the message it would send is that if you are Canadian and you disagree with the wrong person on the internet, you can be put in prison. Now, this guy's had his life ruined. I did a fundraiser for him, actually, called Freedom of Tweets. Get it? With Lauren Southern, who came up with that wonderful name, who's a libertarian politician in Canada. And contributor to Rebel Media, our friend Ezra Levant's outfit, which is very good, up in Canada. Anyway, so the guy's had his life torn apart. There's a fundraiser to try and help him sort of put it back together again, which I think has raised about 60,000 of the 100,000 that he's out of pocket. This guy has been banned from using the internet. He has paid tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees because a feminist disagreed with him on the internet and then claimed that he was harassing her. This is, of course, what they do. They mischaracterize disagreement, criticism, and ridicule as abuse and harassment.
Sorry, so who is this guy exactly? What's his background?
Gregory Allen Elliott. I don't think he's a journalist or anyone particularly remarkable. I think he's just a private citizen, just a regular guy with a small family business and a couple of sons, and the sons are quite hot, actually. Regular business, and he had his life destroyed by these dishonest gender activists. Anyway, long story short, he was just when this goes out, I don't know, but on Friday he was given a not guilty verdict, thank God, by the Canadian courts. And the feminazi Twitter Gestapo were given a good slap around the face, a much deserved one.
Well, hurrah for that. Hurrah for that. So, I mean, was it just the judge being sensible or what?
I don't know. I think most people realise this was preposterous, but the police, of course, in Canada are, as you suggested earlier, part of that nexus of the political.
As indeed are the police in Scotland. Don't forget, Police Scotland, as I believe they're called, investigated the tweets of Katie Hopkins.
Right, exactly. The police now, because they don't want to go out and fix real crime, like, I don't know, stopping Muslim rape gangs from abusing 1,400 girls in Rotherham, they would much rather police the tweets of, 20-year-old white guys who say they're going to blow up airports as a joke.
Well, it's much less racist to do that.
Or of professional polemical media columnists and TV presenters like Katie Hopkins, who they actually wasted public money on investigating Katie Hopkins. I cannot even wrap my head around it. I mean, you and I are next, let's be honest.
Yes.
Anyway, so good result in Canada. A good blow for free speech, which is good, but the battle is very much not over yet.
Yes. Before we go, let me just say a farewell to my friend Bob Carter, who died this week. He dropped dead of a heart attack. Have you come across Bob Carter at all, Milo?
No, I hadn't. I'm sorry.
No. Bob Carter was one of the world's great climate skeptics. He was a English-born, Kiwi raised, and he taught at an Australian university in the Earth Sciences department, and he was apparently brilliant. He was a dedicated teacher. He was intellectually acute. He was massively on top of his subject. And then one day he made the big mistake of telling the world what he thought about man-made climate change. And like a lot of geologists, he had a good perspective on this. He understood that there have been shifts in the world's CO2 levels and certainly in the world's temperature levels far, far greater than anything we've experienced in recent history during the time when the Earth was inhabited by humans. And he recognized that it's quite impossible, the notion that human beings have the knob which controls the world's temperatures. Anyway, he retired a few years ago, and he was persecuted for his politics. He was even denied his library card in his university. I mean, normally when professors retire, they get sort of.
And they didn't give him a library card.
They took away his library card. They took away his email address. They stopped him from teaching postgrad students, etc., etc. They did everything they could to pile on the humiliation.
Yeah.
He was a victim of the persecution of skeptics, and it happens throughout academia. And one of the reasons that so few, or so relatively few, scientists are prepared to stick their head above the parapets is because they've got mortgages to pay, they've got families to feed. They can't afford to go against the so-called consensus. And Bob was one of those. Bob Carter was a great man, and I'd like to say farewell to him on Radio Free Delingpole. So now I have. He was a great guy. Well, that brings us to the end of a really quite disgraceful show, Marlo. I was quite embarrassed with you, particularly the way that you wrote off Led Zeppelin. That kind of
what a load of old garbage.
That kind of crass ignorance is the sort of thing that I associate with people who haven't been to Oxford or Cambridge.
Well, I dropped out of Cambridge, so that must be why.
Oh, well, that must be right. But thank you for coming on the show. I might possibly have you back if you're very, very good.
I might possibly accept.
Okay. Thank you for listening. You're listening to Radio Free Delingpole, broadcasting to you from occupied Europe with our guest, Milo Yiannopoulos. Goodbye.
Ricochet. Join the conversation.